Kurzgesagt put out a video today called Why Korea is Dying Out, which seems like a very odd thing for a Kurzgesagt video to be about, and I figured we could go over it together on stream. Let's check it out.
Every 2 years, 1 million Japanese disappear. China's population will halve by the end of the century.
Jesus Christ! Just a million Japanese people disappear into thin air? What's happening over there? The Large Hadron Collider is having unintended consequences.
The median age in Italy has reached 48. All around the world, birth rates are crashing. Is humanity dying out? What's going on, and how bad is it? For hundreds of thousands of years, the human population barely grew at all, haunted by disease, famine and war until the Industrial Revolution. Exponential progress led to exponential growth, pushing our numbers to 6 billion in the year 1999 and 8 billion just 24 years later. And our numbers will continue to rise for at least another 60 years, but this growth obscures something. People kind of stopped having babies. For a stable population, every couple needs to have 2 children on average. If the number is higher, it grows. If lower, it shrinks. If it's well below, it shrinks a lot and quickly. Like in South Korea, one of the hottest exporters of pop culture. Its fertility rate lay at 0.8 children per woman in 2022, the lowest in the world.
God damn.
This means 100 South Koreans of childbearing age today will have 40 kids, who then will have 16 kids, who then will have 6.
Okay, but like, that's not how that works. Again, this is hypothetical generation sizes. Like, you can say, this first part, 100 South Korean citizens today would have, on average, about 40 kids. But that's not... projecting it any further than that is ridiculousness. That's not how birth rates work.
If nothing changes, then within 100 years, there will be 94% fewer young people and South Korea will see a population implosion. That is, if things stay the same. We have...
Which, by the way, is a fallacy. Again, the popular example of this is when in the 90s, women started doing more running. And a lot of like the running magazines of the time were like, women's running speeds are increasing. Look at this graph, and it like showed like the average like woman's run time like over the last 20 years and an explosion of speed. And they're like, oh, but at this rate in the early 2000s, women will be running a mile in just a minute. And it's like, well, no, actually, that the assumption of that kind of continuing growth or continuing decline is not an accurate thing to do. No way that was a thing. It was absolutely a thing, GamerG.
Yet to see if there's a bottom to fertility rates. Although looking at the bigger picture and
well, yes, surely there's a bottom to fertility rates. The bottom is 0, right?
Numbers, this population will not shrink that much. It simply returns to the level it once was. In 1950, there were 20 million South Koreans. In 2023, there are 52 million, and by 2100, there will be 24 million again. But the issue is not that there will be
Wait, that's not even the right math.
2100, there will be 24 million again.
By 2100, there will be 24 million again, which is still more than the 20 million you started out with.
But the issue is not that there will be fewer South Koreans, the issue is the composition of the population. In 1950, the median age was 18. In 2023, it's 45. In 2100, it will be 59. A country.
Well, I wonder if there might be an overarching reason for why the median age was 18 in 1950. I wonder why. It's because of World War II. all of the older people died in World War II.
Of seniors. And South
Oh
Korea
yeah,
is
the Korean War also happened. Great lump. Exactly, yeah.
far from alone. China may be seeing the steepest population reversal in history, unstoppable at this point. Rapid industrialization, urbanization, and rising incomes meant that the Chinese started to prefer smaller families. That, plus the introduction of the...
Well, it's also because of the fact that, like, the economy slowed down and things became more expensive, generally speaking.
one-child policy, which aimed to slow population growth.
Oh yeah, China fucked itself with the one-child policy. That's true.
Means that China has had a low fertility rate for decades. With a fertility rate of 1.16 births per
Hey,
woman,
Basilis.
within 4 generations,
Hey, Banui.
100 young Chinese will turn into 20. China's fertility rates are now one of the lowest in East Asia, lower than even Japan's. In comparison, Europe's depopulation is much slower despite low fertility, since unlike Asia, most states have had a steady flow of...
To be clear, talking about birth rates on its own isn't bad. It is good to know the reason behind these trends. Okay? I just want to be clear. I know some people are being like, "Oh man, this is sounding like white supremacist stuff," but like that, I don't think that's what this is. They're just talking about the birth rate concept and like what might happen in the future.
Immigrants. The impact is complex, as a good chunk of immigrants come from other low fertility rate areas. The number of immigrant women who do have a lot of children is...
I was going to donate with a snarky name, but you can't do that anymore. I think you can still do that. Just exclamation point tip over on Twitch.
not
Hey,
yet high
Xenomonic.
enough to make a big dent, and fertility rates of immigrants tend to adjust to the native population within 2 to 3 generations. In Eastern Europe, the decline has sped up even more because many young people have emigrated to stronger economies like Germany, whose median age is one of the highest in the world at 46. Latin America fell below replacement in 2015. In the US, immigration is the only thing keeping the population growing substantially. There are still places where fertility rates have not fallen below replacement yet. In much of the Middle East, North and Sub-Saharan Africa...
Salmon Moose, there were some people who were claiming like Kurzgesagt was like being paid by Bill Gates to like create the impression that like climate change wasn't that bad, because they put out a video about how like there's still hope to save the planet. I don't know. I haven't seen that many strange takes from Kurzgesagt, but this one just seemed weird. Like why Korea is dying out. Weird enough that I wanted to check it out on stream.
Africa, fertility is still high, which creates the same concerns about overpopulation as when Asia grew very quickly in the 1950s, but that turned out to be unfounded. But recently, the UN has reduced its forecast for Africa's population drastically. For Nigeria, estimates were lowered from 733 million to 546 million by 2000.
Which is still crazy. That explosion of population growth is wild.
1,100. Similar trends are being noted across the continent. As Africa develops, fertility rates are shrinking much faster than anticipated. It's becoming more likely that East Asia's story will repeat itself. By the end of the century, most places in Africa may be below replacement too. So declining birth rates and aging populations have become a general trend all over the world. Why is all of this a big deal?
Oh.
I was going to donate as ******* Shittington and declare the age of dictions to be upon us, with some very ominous text. You know, the seal is open, and the lambs are weeping blood. Oh well, EWA.
I like that the text-to-speech wouldn't read dick, but would read Shittington. That's amazing. Oh, God. Thank you for the incredibly generous $100 dono. Paladin, I don't know what I would do without you, so thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it. You help come through even on slower stream days. I really appreciate it.
Demographics and poverty. for a functioning society, you need enough people in the prime of their lives. Young and middle-aged people do most of the work. In any economic system, working-age people create a society's wealth. In retirement, you stop contributing as much to the economy. But the majority of healthcare costs are generated by seniors. The way the world worked in the past was that a lot of younger people took care of a few older people. Imagine a society where most people are older than 60. The financial burden for the young will be immense, unsustainable even for the richest countries. Even in the best case, this will mean people having to work way longer, exploding healthcare costs and poverty, while states with shrinking incomes struggle to keep up with rising costs.
Okay, well, I feel like there's a lot of assumptions being made under the surface here that are weird, right? Yeah, exactly, irate lump. It's not that the elderly are this ever-expanding bubble problem that can't be solved. We can solve that problem with this thing called taxes. Specifically, taxes on the wealthy. Like, the top 1% of our country, if they were taxed properly. Again, this is just if they were taxed on the amount that they are supposed to pay. The IRS put out an investigative report like 2 years ago that showed that the top 1% of Americans underreport their income by like to the tune of $175 billion a year. Like, again, the issue of like, oh man, old people cost so much money. Well, the wealthy are also costing us a lot of money. So like, what if we just tax the wealthy at the rate that they are supposed to be taxed right now and actually bothered to collect on that? And hell, maybe we could even go a step further and raise their taxes. Like a lot. This isn't an insurmountable issue, and like the idea that all of the young people need to be paying, well, some of those old people have billions of dollars. And maybe they should just pay taxes on that, you know? Yeah, would literally solve the issue.
Technology might soften the blow, but can't compensate entirely. We can see this happening already. 11 out of 31 provinces in China are running deficits for their pension funds. They got old before they got rich, and now they...
Well, okay. But we talked about this the other day. You can see this in China right now, because China has a retirement age for working men of like 55 or 60, whereas the retirement age for women is like 55. And that was set in like the 1950s when most of those workers weren't reaching that age anyway, and has remained the same. It's reached the point now where like workers are actually living beyond that retirement age. And, well, the Chinese government is having to raise the age of retirement. Because on top of the pensions, they're supporting 2 different healthcare systems that are entirely separate from each other. Yeah, 55 for women and 65 for men in government work. No. It was 60 for men in government work. But they had to raise it. They might have raised it to 65 for men in government work. Yeah, it's... there's some things being left out here.
Can't really catch up anymore. China's working age population is predicted to fall by 20%, or 200 million people by 2050, as much as today's entire working age population of the US.
True.
Infrastructure collapse is an almost universal constant of population decline, because infrastructure works at scale and doesn't get cheaper to operate if it's used by fewer people. If a population declines, be it because of urbanization or the loss of industry and employment, once people and their income disappear, the resources necessary to sustain infrastructure disappear too. You can see it in many depopulated towns and cities in East Germany that suffered sharp population decline after German reunification. Or look at Japan. You can tour the countryside to see dying towns. Wait, if there are few people, won't life get cheaper and better, and there'll be more resources to go around? Well, no. Population decline doesn't lead to prosperity. It's people's ideas and work that create our prosperity, not the mere availability of resources. Another danger for aging societies is that elected governments could decide to mostly represent the interests and fears of their elderly populations, potentially leading to short-term thinking and a preference for conserving wealth over
you just described the Republican Party.
innovation. That's not a society that can handle issues like climate change, which need massive investment and fresh ideas, something the world is already having a hard time with. Many people think that having fewer humans on Earth is actually a good thing because our societies are too unsustainable, we're using up too many resources, and because of climate change. The problem is that even if you want fewer humans, this process is very likely too slow to have a positive impact on the environment. The world population is going to grow for at least 60 more years before it may shrink again. By then, we have to solve climate change. Likewise, any other upsides a lower population might have will most likely not materialize themselves this century. So, just like import people, the easiest solution seems to be immigration, but the fertility of immigrants adjusts to local levels within 3 generations.
Which is still a long time.
So you need a constant influx of new migrants, which is not sustainable long-term as birth rates are dropping everywhere. The only way would be to keep poor countries poor so that the young and motivated migrate to developed countries looking for—
Huh, you mean like some sort of capitalist hellscape? Like we do right now.
opportunity and a better life. Kind of an immoral thing to wish for.
It's literally the guiding principle of like the IMF and the World Bank.
By the end of the century, Africa will have the highest number of young people in the world, and so African migrants might become the world's most sought-after immigrants, with elderly nations fighting hard for every person willing to make the move. Immigration can also create societal or cultural tensions, which is a universal phenomenon in all cultures, especially when cultures with very different sets of values meet, often leading to a backlash that slows immigration down again. It's easy to be frustrated at this, but ignoring this will only divide societies, empower demagogues, and increase xenophobia. Economically, immigration—
Well, and the solution to that, by the way, is just living near people who are different than you. Like, we know that when people live near others who are different and learn to, like, respect them as human beings, that type of divide is healed.
is largely beneficial for societies, even if this seems counterintuitive to many people. Especially countries like—
Hey, look, but look. I don't like going hard on Kurzgesagt. I feel like I've been pretty even-handed in this video. I think it's pretty cool that they are, you know, essentially saying immigration is a net good, because there are a lot of people who, on the left and the right, who genuinely don't believe that.
And increase xenophobia. Economically, immigration is largely beneficial for societies, even if this seems counterintuitive to many people. Especially countries like the US, an immigrant nation built on the idea of personal freedom and opportunity through hard work, will benefit the most. Countries like this will have a clear advantage this century, especially if they can attract the world's brightest and most ambitious. Conclusion and our opinion. This topic is way too big, affects societies as diverse as literally all of humanity. So please take this part with a gigantic grain of salt. Obviously, we're looking at this from our Central European perspective. One way to look at falling birth rates is as a side effect of the world being less bad than it was. Especially women are freer, more educated, and wealthier than in the past. But it turns out that if societies are better off, individuals often decide to have fewer kids. Interestingly, there's a gap between how many kids people want and how many they're having. The mean number of kids women in Europe want is around 2.3, much more than they're actually having. While we gained a lot of freedoms in the last century across continents and economic systems, that came at a cost. The tight-knit communities and family structures that were part of our nature, where kids could be brought up by a village. Today, young parents have to deal with different challenges and societal expectations. Women are kind of ground down between the wish and expectation to have a family and a career, being pressured to do both but not compromise either. Men are sharing parental duties more equally than they used to, but are often still expected to be the provider. And it's sadly true that usually at least one parent's career is held back. In many developed countries, the gender pay gap is chiefly a pay gap between mothers and everyone else. But it's not just outside pressure. Our culture of individualism probably plays a role too. We have only one life to explore, be free, travel, have fun, accomplish something, and try to be happy. So people commit to partners later in life and often decide against big families or any at all. And that's fair. Nobody owes their country babies. So far, no country has successfully managed to increase birth rates significantly, so as of now, we don't really know what works.
Well, what I think is very telling here is that they bothered to collect the information on how many kids people want and find that it's 2.3 on average. You know, most of these people want somewhere between 1 to 3 kids, but they find that they don't have that many kids. And honestly, it really does seem to come down to costs. You know, no, Solazar, nobody owes their country a baby. Like, I know people in my own social circle here in America who don't have kids because of how expensive kids are. Like, they and their partners would like kids, but they're just barely making it by. They can't afford a kid, you know? Hello, that's me. Right? Like, the reason people aren't having kids really tends to come down to economic reasons. Like, you can't go one debate in America, in American politics, without someone asking a question about the soaring costs of healthcare. Like, on average, or not healthcare, but, well, healthcare, housing, and also childcare. You know, if you want to have a kid, but you need to work, and you don't have, like, family members who can watch your kid while you're at work, you have to spend like $10,000+ a year, sometimes $20,000 a year, paying someone to watch your kids while you're working. And most people look at that and they're like, I can't make that work. I make $40K a year. I can't make that work. And if you're a single parent, like, I look at how much I make off of this stream, I wouldn't be able to raise a kid as a single parent. Like, it doesn't, the math doesn't work.
But here are a few options to at least make the lives of parents much easier. Free and abundant access to childcare, financial benefits for parents, more and cheaper housing. Parenthood has to stop being a career obstacle, and our culture needs to become more positive towards families. And that's something we can all work.
Our culture needs to be more positive toward, I don't know, culture. I don't think culturally that's the issue. I think people are generally positive when it comes to families. Like, I don't know anybody at any point in my life who looked at, like, a picture of a happy family and was like, those goddamn families out there ruining it for us young people. Like, that's not a thing.
Work on. The next time you sit next to a crying baby, don't be a jerk about it. Kids are hard.
Well, yeah, don't be a jerk to the mom or dad who has a crying baby, but also sitting next to a crying baby sucks. Even if it's your own baby. Like, it still sucks. We are biologically wired to find that one of the most irritating sounds ever.
Grounded, still a work I progress.
Oh, God. Catalina Gearbox, thank you for the $5 dono. I really appreciate it. Still a work in progress. That's a very nice little fort you got going on there. Nice.
In the end, humanity will not die out.
Yeah, but again, I still don't know adults who'd be like, shut that baby up. Like, how? It's a baby.
Because we're having fewer babies. The age and composition of our societies changes quickly, and we need to deal with that sooner rather than later. But in the end, of all the incredibly hard challenges we've faced before, why would this be the one we can't solve? Getting to the bottom of the population crash starts with analyzing and interpreting massive amounts of data. And if you're looking for a free way to start building your data skill...
I mean, again, I don't see this as a population crash. The birth rate is lower, but it's not a population crash. It's just another social problem to figure out. And also, Korea isn't dying out. South Korea is gonna be fine. It's still gonna exist. Feels like some trad life great replacement bullshit. Well, it feels like that because trad life great replacement bullshitters co-opt a lot of like the terminology from stuff like this. But like there is like a declining birth rate in certain countries. We can talk about that. The issue is you don't then follow that with, and that's why we need to make an ethno-state. Or like, and that's why, you know, like you don't follow it up with like racist shit. That's the problem great replacement theory runs into. Obviously. Both the fact that it's wrong and the fact that it's racist. The vast majority of people don't financially plan on having kids. 24 years of marriage, and by the time we felt financially stable enough, we decided just not to have kids. I'm 56. I could be retired. Oh, that sounds nice, Mr. Anderson. Raised my son, got sole custody of him, and didn't get child support. Being a man doing the right thing is unheard of in Wisconsin. Yeah, like, I imagine also getting custody was difficult. Kurzgesagt only has one way to publicly express horniness, and it was in this video. It's true. It's true. That's why we have to kill the scapegoat. Oh. Well, no. See, GamerG, that's a misconception. Because, frankly, when we're looking at policies and how they shape and affect the future, that's important, right? And it also is important to take into account how many people there are going to be in, like, 20, 40, 60, 80, 100 years. Like, those are things we need to take into account. Like, on a social, political level, you know? That's the issue, is that we need to be able to talk about this stuff, but also not fixate on it as if this is going to be the end of the world. And really the thing I disliked the most about this video was it framing it as if it's going to be an existential problem. You know, what with the title, Why Korea is Dying Out. That's the thing I really have the problem with, because it does play into that. It does play into kind of that white supremacist bullshit. You could argue that's to get in the viewers, and I'm guessing that's probably why it was named that way, but, like, at the end of the day, it really does need to boil down to And I don't know that Kurzgesagt is really capable of taking the next step in its analysis of placing the burden of this problem on the system of capitalism itself. You know, like I don't Kurzgesagt is not a leftist outlet. You know, they're not a left, you know, a socialist rag. Solving the issue in capitalism feels like it would just lead to an ethno-state. I don't think that is the case either.
Hi, friendo.
Kyrie, thank you for giving Valhalla Vidya a sub. That's very kind of you. No, like, the issue is capitalism can't solve this problem. Capitalism exacerbates the problem, right? Like, the reason most people aren't having kids is because of economic instability. But capitalism thrives off of keeping most people in that position of economic instability so that it can better exploit them as workers, right? And on top of that, like, the solution would be, well, let's tax the wealthy more. Except the problem is that the wealthy in this capitalist system wield vast amounts of political power by leveraging their money to donate to campaigns or to super PACs or whatever. And then that lobbying of the government is able to undermine democratic controls on capitalism, which allows them to keep ever more money and keep ever more people in economic instability and need. So the issue here is that capitalism is unable really to fix this problem in the long term. Even the issue is, even if you found a short-term solution, or like short-term policies that would benefit population growth, capitalism would undo those in order to benefit the capitalists. So, well, yeah, and that's exactly what I'm trying to say, GamerG. We could pass vast social welfare reforms. You know, get paid family leave, get good health care, get affordable housing for all, get like all of these things passed. But the issue is capitalism and the coercive effect it has on democracy would seek to undo those over time. You can see this and in like how the UK attempts to privatize its NHS, you know? You can see this in how they attempted to privatize their railroads. You can see it all the time.
Goddamn, most people are so brainwashed to think capitalism's so great, they don't even know about the other economic systems. Capitalism is the worst.
True, Catalina Gearbox, and thank you for the $5 dono. The issue is that we can talk about this birth rate problem, and I find that interesting to talk about, and I think that Kurzgesagt covered it fairly well here. The main issue is that Kurzgesagt, without that kind of material analysis from like a leftist socialist perspective, you know, that critique of capitalism, they are unable to propose a solution to the problem, which is, and they kind of alluded to it but didn't go all the way in naming it, but it's capitalism. The prioritization of short-term profits, that's capitalism. That's what the capitalist system does. They're purposely breaking the NHS so they can sell it off like they did National Rail and Freight Line. Now, my question is, I heard recently that during the pandemic, they renationalized a lot of the rail lines in the UK. That seems pretty cool. And the trains were cheaper and ran better. I haven't looked that much into that, but that I was reading, as I do sometimes, came across that. Yes and no? Okay. Well, I obviously need to do a deeper dive into it. Ayo? Alright. Do the call here when you are ready. Call here in about an hour when you're ready. Humanist Report is going to be on in about an hour. They had to push it back because of editing stuff happens. But yeah, we're going to be talking to Mike from the Humanist Report. Very excited. Everyone loves Mike. You know, in a space of like where like a lot of political content creators are controversial, Mike is always one of the good ones. Figured it was the start of stream and I already missed it. Now we've been going for 2 hours now. Mr. Anderson, thank you for the 5 gifted memberships over on YouTube. I appreciate that immensely. I need to figure out if I can set up an alert for YouTube donos. I really, really appreciate that. Thank you. Mr. Anderson. Yeah, also, is your username a reference to The Matrix? I've been wondering. You should try to go on Leftist Mafia. Well, Karen Hall, interesting that you should say that because I'm going on it next week. On next Thursday. I'll be on Leftist Mafia.